For years ago, when I was 14, my dad discovered that my mom had been having affairs. Not just one affair, multiple, long-term affairs spanning basically their entire marriage. Apparently, he'd known about a couple of them before but had forgiven her and stayed for the kids. Looking back, I realize how fucked up that dynamic must have been, but as kids, we had no idea. The affair he found out about 4 years ago was the final straw, partly because of the timing. See, this particular affair happened right around when I was conceived. So naturally, Dad starts doing the math and realizes there's a chance that me and my two siblings, I have an older brother, 20 now, and a younger sister, 16 now, might not actually be his biological children. This was literally the first time any of us kids had heard about Mom's cheating. We were completely blindsided. One day we're a normal family eating dinner and arguing about whose turn it is to do dishes, and the next day our parents are screaming at each other and throwing around words like paternity and DNA test. Dad insisted on DNA tests for all three of us kids. I remember being so confused and scared, like, what 14-year-old understands the implications of something like that? My siblings seemed to grasp it better than I did, probably because they were older, but I was just terrified that our family was falling apart. The results came back, and it was like a bomb went off in our house. My older brother and younger sister? Dad's kids. Me? Not Dad's kid. I still remember the look on everyone's faces when we got those results. My dad just went completely cold toward me. Like, overnight, I went from being his son to being this reminder of my mom's betrayal. My siblings looked at me like I was some kind of imposter who had been living in their house under false pretenses. The worst part was my older brother's reaction. Jake and I had been best friends our whole lives. We shared a room, played video games together every night, had inside jokes, did that typical brother stuff where we'd roast each other but always have each other's backs. He was my hero, honestly. But after those DNA results, it was like a switch flipped. Suddenly, I wasn't his real brother anymore. I was just some random kid who happened to live in the same house. Within 2 months of getting those results, Dad had filed for divorce, found his own place, and moved out. And here's the kicker. He took Jake and my sister Emma with him. Just packed up their stuff and left me behind with Mom. Nobody asked me what I wanted. Nobody sat me down and explained why this was happening. One day I came home from school and half the house was empty. Jake's bed, his dresser, his gaming setup, all gone. Emma's room looked like it had been ransacked. And I'm standing there like a fucking idiot, wondering if I'm having a nightmare. Dad's explanation? You're not my responsibility anymore. You're her son, not mine. Those words still hit me like a truck every time I think about them. 14 years of bedtime stories, teaching me to ride a bike, coming to my soccer games, helping with homework. All of that apparently meant nothing the second some DNA tests said we didn't share genes. But Jake's betrayal hurt worse than Dad's. At least Dad was acting out of anger and betrayal about Mom. Jake was supposed to be my brother regardless. We grew up together, fought together, laughed together.
How does that just stop mattering?
I tried texting him, calling him, even showing up at Dad's new place a few times. Jake would barely look at me. When he did talk to me, it was with this cold, disgusted tone, like I was something dirty he didn't want to touch. The things he said to me during those first few months still keep me up at night sometimes. Stuff like, you're not my real brother, so stop pretending, and I don't know why you keep trying to hang around us when you're not even family. Once he told me I was living proof of what a whore our mom was. I was 14. I was a scared kid who had just lost his entire family and didn't understand why. And my brother, the person I looked up to most in the world, was treating me like I was the one who had ruined everything. Meanwhile, Mom was falling apart. Losing Dad was one thing, but losing the kids broke something in her. She started drinking more, crying constantly, barely getting out of bed some days. She'd lost most of her friends because news of the affairs had gotten around our small town, and Dad's family, who I'd always considered my family too, wanted nothing to do with either of us. So there I was, a 14-year-old kid trying to take care of a depressed, alcoholic mother while also dealing with my own feelings of abandonment and rejection. I was cooking dinner most nights, making sure bills got paid, basically playing parent to my actual parent. School became hell too. Word got around about the situation, small towns, you know how it is, and suddenly I was that kid whose mom cheated and whose family fell apart. Some kids were sympathetic, but others were cruel as hell. I got called bastard more times than I can count. The isolation was the worst part. I'd see Dad around town sometimes with Jake and Emma, and they'd look right through me like I didn't exist. Emma at least seemed uncomfortable about it, but Jake would actually smirk at me. Like seeing me hurt was satisfying to him. My extended family, Dad's parents, his siblings, cousins I'd grown up with, they all cut contact too. Grandma wouldn't even look at me at the grocery store. Uncle Mike, who used to take me fishing every summer, acted like he'd never met me. The only person who stood by me was my dad's father, my grandpa. He was furious with everyone for how they were treating me. He'd say stuff like, "That boy has been my grandson for 14 years, and some stupid test isn't going to change that." He was the only one who seemed to understand that I was still the same person I'd always been. Ages 14 to 17 were rough as hell. Mom eventually got into therapy and AA, so she slowly got better, but our relationship was complicated. I think she felt guilty about the whole situation, but also resented that I was a reminder of her mistakes. We were both damaged people trying to figure out how to function. I threw myself into school and work, got a job as soon as I turned 15, saved up money, focused on getting good grades so I could get scholarships for college. My plan was to graduate, get the hell out of our town, and never look back. Jake and Emma both went to the same high school as me, so I had to see them regularly. Emma would sometimes give me these sad, guilty looks in the hallway, but she never approached me. Jake continued to act like I didn't exist, which honestly was better than the active hostility from before. Dad remarried when I was 16. Some woman he'd met through work. They had a big wedding that my siblings attended, and I found out about it through Facebook posts. That hurt more than I expected it to. The worst part was holidays and birthdays. I'd see their social media posts of family gatherings and vacations, and it was like looking at this parallel life I'd been erased from. They looked happy, complete, like removing me from the equation had actually made their family better. Fast forward to 3 months ago. I'm 18 now, graduated high school, working full-time while taking community college classes, basically just trying to build my own life. Mom and I have a decent relationship now, we're both in therapy, and we've worked through a lot of our issues. Then Grandpa calls me with news that changes everything. Remember how I mentioned that he was the only one who stood by me? Well, apparently he'd never been completely satisfied with how that first DNA test was handled. Something about the lab, the chain of custody, he wasn't sure. But he'd been quietly investigating it for years. Turns out, the original lab had major contamination issues during the time period when our samples were processed. They'd actually had their accreditation revoked and been shut down for falsifying results and having contaminated samples. Grandpa had gotten a court order to have the samples retested at a different, more reputable lab. And guess what the results were? I'm Dad's biological son. Always have been. The first test was wrong. 4 years of my life were destroyed because of a fucking lab error. When Grandpa told me, I didn't feel relief or vindication or any of the emotions you'd expect. I felt rage. Pure, white-hot rage. For years. 4 years of abandonment, rejection, loneliness, and pain. For years of being treated like I was worthless by the people who were supposed to love me unconditionally. For years of watching my siblings live the life I'd been cut out of. All because of a mistake. Word spread fast once the new results came out. Within a week, Dad showed up at our door wanting to talk. I refused to see him. He kept coming back, leaving messages, trying to get Mom to convince me to hear him out. Finally, I agreed to let him say whatever he needed to say, just to get him to leave me alone. His apology was pathetic. Lots of, "I was hurt and I wasn't thinking clearly, and I hope you can understand why I reacted the way I did." He kept talking about how we could rebuild our relationship and be a family again. I let him finish, then told him to get the fuck out of my life. His face went through about 5 different emotions: shock, hurt, anger, confusion. Like he couldn't believe I wasn't jumping into his arms with gratitude that Daddy wanted me back. "You're my son," he said, like that was supposed to fix everything. "No," I told him. "I was your son. For 14 years, I was your son. But the second you thought I wasn't genetically related to you, you threw me away like garbage. You made your choice. Now I'm making mine. He tried to argue, saying I was being unfair, that I was too young to understand that family is complicated. I cut him off. Family doesn't abandon each other. Family doesn't treat children like they're disposable. You want to know what family looks like? It's Grandpa, who stood by me when everyone else walked away. It's Mom, who stayed and helped me pick up the pieces. It's not the people who showed me exactly how conditional their love was. Dad wasn't the only one who tried to crawl back. Jake started calling and texting, wanting to meet up and explain things. I ignored him for weeks, but he kept persisting. Finally, I agreed to meet him at a coffee shop, mainly because I wanted to tell him to fuck off to his face. His approach was different from Dad's. He tried to act like we were just two bros catching up, making small talk about college and work. Then he got to the real point. Look, I know things got weird for a while there, he said, like 4 years of cruelty was just weird. But we were all hurting, you know? Dad was a mess. Everything was falling apart. I was angry and confused, and I took it out on you.
But we're brothers, man.
Real brothers. We can get past this. I stared at him across that table, and all I could think about were all the times he'd made me feel worthless. All the times I'd needed my big brother, and he looked at me like I was trash. You want to know what I learned from you? I said. I learned that blood doesn't mean shit when it comes to family. Because when you thought we didn't share DNA, you showed me exactly what kind of person you really are. You're cruel, shallow, and your love comes with conditions. He got defensive, saying I was being dramatic, that I needed to let go of the past. He actually had the balls to tell me I was holding grudges and being immature. You know what's immature? I said. Treating a 14-year-old kid like shit because of something he had no control over. You know what's mature? Learning that some bridges burn so completely that they can't be rebuilt. I left him sitting there and haven't responded to his messages since. Emma has been the most persistent. She keeps showing up at my work, waiting for me in parking lots, trying to corner me for conversations I don't want to have. Her approach is pure guilt trip. She cries, talks about how much she missed me, how she was just a kid and didn't know how to handle the situation. She keeps saying she wants her brother back. Where was that sentiment for 4 years? I asked her during one of these ambush conversations. Where was missing me when you were posting happy family photos without me? Where was wanting your brother back when I was spending holidays alone? She doesn't have good answers for that. Just more tears and promises that things can be different now. I feel bad for Emma, because she was genuinely young when this all happened. She was only 12. But her age doesn't erase the pain of being forgotten and replaced. And more importantly, she's had years to reach out. She's had years to show that she cared.
She chose not to.
The most infuriating part of this whole situation is Mom's reaction. She's forgiven everyone. Says she understands why they reacted the way they did. She's even started going on dates with Dad, talking about maybe giving their marriage another try. It makes me sick. She keeps telling me that holding on to anger is only hurting myself, that family is important, that I should give them a chance to make things right. She thinks I'm being stubborn and that I'll regret not reconciling later. But here's what she doesn't seem to understand. I'm not the same person I was 4 years ago. The kid who desperately wanted his family back is gone. The kid who would have done anything to have his dad and siblings love him again doesn't exist anymore. I've built a life without them. I've learned to be independent, to rely on myself, to find value in people who choose to love me rather than people who are obligated to. I've learned that family isn't just about blood or shared history. It's about commitment, loyalty, and unconditional love. They failed that test spectacularly. But here's what all these people are missing. This wasn't a mistake. This was a choice. Multiple choices, made by multiple people over multiple years. When Dad got those test results, he chose to abandon me rather than continue loving the kid he'd raised for 14 years. When Jake found out we might not be real brothers, he chose cruelty over compassion. When Emma was building new family memories, she chose to let me be erased from their story. When extended family members were deciding whether to maintain relationships with me, They chose DNA over history. These weren't split-second decisions made in emotional moments. These were sustained patterns of behavior that lasted years. And now that it's convenient for them, now that the test results align with what they want, they expect me to forget all of that and pretend it never happened.